So we're back with some more Master Duel Guide content. It has been a while since I did the previous part of this series talking about summoning mechanics, but we're back in Master Duel now, and I think one more important thing to go over is just the phases of the turn, understanding the flow of your turn, what you need to be doing at each point in the turn with the cards you have, and what your opponent will also be doing similarly. Some things to go over, I guess, again, because it's been a while since I've done the last recording. I've just been doing dailies, because there's going to be some breaks between videos, and in the meantime, I did a little bit of the event. Before that ended, I've been doing a little bit of the new event, which isn't anything crazy. It's just like a 3-win reward kind of thing. Oh, but it's actually already over. Yeah, I didn't get any like crazy resources from this. Mainly just doing the previous event, the duel pass, the dailies, a little bit of the solo mode. And one important thing I want you to know is you don't need to spend gems, even though there is a cap on gems and it's 10k. You don't need to spend them because it does overflow, and that's what you see here. So when you go above 10, any amount that would have put you over 10 gets put in here, and you can see the date that you will need to use it by. They do expire, but it's normally about a month, so you have a month of leeway. You don't need to just burn them because you're about to reach your cap. You have the overflow, and you see exactly when you need to use it by, and it's pretty generous. So I'm building up my gem resources. I have not gotten any new cards really. For the purposes of ladder, I am still going to just use the ninja deck, and my goal was until gold, I think. So we'll see how we go with that. Well, what I wanted to go over, and I think I'll just jump into solo mode to try and show it off, is the phases of the turn. And I also wanted to show off a little bit of a minor gripe I have with people saying that Yu-Gi-Oh is overly complex. It's a nuanced discussion for sure, but what I wanted to kind of also try and highlight is how useful Master Duel is as a resource for sort of gaining a very basic understanding of what is happening on the screen, right? The UI of Master Duel is very good, I think. Did my game just crash? No, a little bit of a stutter, that's fine. So the UI, again, is very good, and it lets you intuit a lot more than you would think. So I'm just in a tutorial here, and without reading anything, and just looking at the sequence of events that happens on the screen, you can gain an understanding about what a card does. So I'm going to normal summon this. I'm not going to read its effect, and I don't want you to read it either. And this is, I'm trying to do it from like a, this is what you're up against perspective, right? Obviously, if you're playing the deck, you should probably read the effect, right? But even if you don't want to do that and just click yes and learn that way, you can probably do it. So imagine that, you know, you are the opponent here, and you see someone summon a card called Eddie the Heavenly Squire. And what happens after they summon it is it glows, and then a card comes out from the deck and lands on the field. Alright, so now I know that when this card is summoned, it brings this card from the deck, right? I didn't read the text on the card. All I did was look at what was happening on the screen. And now I have an understanding about what that card does, not having read a single word in its effect text. And that's kind of what I mean. The automation, the UI and how things sort of glow when they activate lets you intuit a lot if you're just paying attention. That's why it's sometimes important to pay attention, to not get up from your chair and leave when your opponent is playing a combo, and to try and play out duels as much as you can and not scoop. I think it's pretty important. So again, we don't see a glow, a bit of a misspeak, but we see the card lift. It got summoned and then it lifted. So it's very clear that this card is doing something after they summon it, right? Okay, so I'm going to now move on to the phases of the turn. When you click on this part of the UI on the field, you can see it brings up this, and you can kind of see the 6 different phases of the turn. The way the phases tend to work is you enter the phase. If you don't have any effects that can activate in that phase, you pass priority to your opponent. If they also don't have any effects to activate in that phase, then you move on to the next one. So the draw phase is very simple. You just draw a card. In the standby phase, you have perhaps particular effects that activate during the standby phase. For example, a card like Treeborn Frog has its effect that specifically activates in the standby phase. One reason that you might want to activate your quick effect speed cards in the standby phase is to play around cards such as Triple Tactics Talent, because that specifically needs cards to be activated in the main. Some cards can only be activated in the standby, some cards have to be activated in the main, and there's a way of sort of picking and choosing what phase you activate your cards in to best play around your opponent's cards. After the standby phase, you enter the main phase, and this is when you have full access to your hand, not just quick effect speed cards. You can do your normal and special summons for the turn. You can activate non-quick effect speed cards. You can set traps. So this is the phase that you do those kinds of plays in. Bit of an awkward start, but now we have monsters on the field that can attack. We have entered the battle phase. This is very simple. This is when you can attack over your opponent's monsters or deal direct damage to them if they have none. So we can go ahead and do that right now. I don't want to end it just yet, because I also want to show off that once you're finished with attacking with all of your monsters, you have no further plays. You do your checks. Do you have anything to activate? Does your opponent? Then you exit battle phase, and then you have a second main phase where you can then do the same thing you did in your main phase 1. Set additional cards if you need to. Play out more cards in your hand if it's appropriate. And then after the second main phase becomes the end phase. This is similar to the standby phase, where there's particular effects that trigger in the end phase. Some searching effects. For example, a card will say, when this card hits the graveyard during the end phase, do X. There were a lot of cards like that, and so that's when those kinds of cards will sort of trigger and resolve their effect. So that's the basics of phases. For 80-90% of your duels, that's all you're ever going to need to know. It really doesn't get much more complicated than that. To the extent that it does, playing on a client like Master Duel will sort of resolve those issues for you. You'll need to know a little bit more if you end up wanting to play at local events, because you'll need to know these rulings yourself. You won't have a client like this that just automatically applies them. And in that case, you would want to look a little bit more into specific card interactions, damage step poolings. There is a bit of complexity there, but it's not going to come up in most of your duels, and is not necessary to learn if you're playing on Master Duel. So if you're a new player, I wouldn't worry too much about it. So I'm going to keep this video pretty short. That's the size of it. Next video we'll be ready to just dive into ladder, start focusing specifically on my ninja deck, showing off what it's able to do, and climbing as high as we can, preferably to gold, where we may either make some alterations, or we may decide on a more long-term strategy at that point, because we will have a lot of resources to work with in order to build an elevated deck, let's say. I'll see you in the next one.